Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, bringing you our daily dose of news and views covering the topics we hope are relevant to you. Well, we have a lot to get through today in a packed show, and on the positive side, we will be taking a look at a couple of very high-achieving Sikhs who, in just the last few days, have accomplished some high-profile positions in both politics and law. And on the negative side, we report on Hindu nationalist death threats once again emerging against the community, and updates on the latest UK anti-Sikh hate crime. And if that's not enough, we also throw in some interesting US-India religious geopolitics into the mix. Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. Good to see you. And of course, as always, great to have our amazing audience with us today. Thanks for following and watching our videos.
Indeed, and together James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. Of course, we will, as usual, take a look at lots of your great comments, which have fortunately been filling in below the videos. Thanks so much for those, as always. But let's kick off with James. James, what have you got to start us off with today?
Well, we're going to take a look at the RNC in the U.S. with Donald Trump being present and, of course, making, I would say, history, but actually it's happened before where Harmeet Dillon has made a prayer in front of the audience there at the RNC convention. It was several years back, but she actually made the opening prayer. So it's not the first time this has happened. However, this time it seems to create a bit of controversy. This kind of frustrates me because I see it as a very much a double standard. It's very common for prayers of different faiths to be respected and to be presented at the RNC convention. However, this time, because it was a Sikh prayer and there was just a lot of people just causing backlash on that. But as I said, it's not the first time that that Sikhs have been represented on that stage, but I think that the stage has definitely grown much bigger, especially in light of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in his first major appearance since that incident. So I think that really drew up the numbers and caused a bit of stir with people's emotions because they were frustrated, they were angry, they were not knowing what to feel in light of an assassination attempt of a former president. So I think that really played into it as well to some regard. So let's take a look here. I've actually pulled up a story here, and I just want to bring up some of the points about the controversy and why I think that it's been way overblown in terms of the people that are making comments or, just the coverage focusing on this. Now, as you see, Harmeet Dillon is, of course, a very well-educated and learned lawyer. She has her own law firm, and she is a part of the committee for the RNC National. So with that, of course, she's going to be very involved in the running up to the election. Her involvement, of course, is going to be very public, and with that, people are a little skeptical because, as I stated, the RNC has been typically viewed as a very white, Christian, conservative, controlled and initiated party with a lot of that influence. So it really came through. But we've seen before with, Jewish prayers, with, just prayers from all different religions that have been represented here. So once again, it just seems to me to be a double standard in why they're going after this particular prayer. And again, I think it's just got to do with a lot of confusion and emotional upheaval that's going on in the US right now with that event being so fresh in people's minds. But I just wanted to show you here that The news, again, are having the same opinions, depending, of course, on which news outlets you're watching, but they do have the same opinions as I, that this is not something new. The Republican National Committee has always had their different faiths praying at these events, and it's always been welcomed. So I just really don't like the way that some people are calling it blasphemy. Other people are saying that it didn't have a place there. And I think that what the overall audience was missing is that it's a prayer of protection. It's a prayer of positivity. It's a message to try to bring people together, not to divide them. And I think that was the message that was really missed. And for most of the people that are complaining about it, they should really go back and rewatch it and just really pay attention to what's going on, because I think that they've missed the message altogether. With that said, I'm going to actually pull it up and let you view the event right here in the prayer. I thought it was beautifully done. I thought it was very respectful, very tasteful, and a strong message. So let's take a look at that.
कोई न जाने तुम्हारा अंत ऊंचे ते ऊंचा भगवंत सगल समगरी तुमरे सूत्रधारी तुम ते होए सो आज्ञाकारी तुम्हारी गत मित तुम ही.
And that, Angus, is, I thought, very powerful and beautiful, eloquent, just very well done. So I'm just disappointed in the people that reacted in a negative way there.
Yeah, I had a look on Twitter, or X as they call it now, and I looked at some of these comments, and I have to say I was absolutely astonished at some of the backlash from the, I won't even say right-wingers, it was from the religious, and I'll call them extremists, in my opinion. We've talked a lot about religious extremism, whatever the faith, and there's a lot of Christian extremists, I cannot describe them as any other way, who have this dreadful intolerance, this bigotry against any other religion. And this is one of the things that I often praise the Sikh faith about. The Sikh faith, as I understand it, is one of the most tolerant religions on the planet. Within the teachings, it says there is no drive to convert others to Sikhism. It's not a central tenet of its faith, like most other faiths. Its central tenet is to make a Muslim a better Muslim, is to make a Christian a better Christian, etc., etc., etc. It's all about tolerance and understanding of other religions. And yet, in contrast, we see across social media these Christians, and I come from a Christian background, I'm ashamed of what I read from the Christian community. But again, I will call it the extremist community. Those comments were just outrageous, saying, how dare you worship a false god? You have no right to stand up there. These were comments from literally centuries ago, in my opinion. These are comments from an extremist element that have absolutely no place in any religion. Every religion should be based on human tolerance. Religious values reflect basically moral values in whatever interpretation that you see them in your own culture and your own religion. But essentially they are around tolerance and humanity and kindness, etc., etc. And these comments were from people who were just so narrow-minded, so intolerant. They don't belong in any religion as such. They belong in a cult, frankly. It's cultism. That's what it is. Right. I was actually quite angry reading a lot of those comments. I thought, how dare you be so intolerant of somebody who stood up? And this lady, as I think you're going to elaborate on shortly, James, this lady has got a background of being a Republican activist. She's political as well as religious. She has acted on behalf of so many fundamental right-wing issues and succeeded. She's taken cases on that no other people in the Republican side would take on. She's touched untouchable cases and won them on behalf of the Republican Party, on behalf of right-wing people. Right. So her credentials are impeccable. She is one of your own, and yet you tear her down like this from a so-called religious standpoint is unforgivable. It is intolerance at its extreme. It does not belong in this modern world, in my opinion, James.
Absolutely. And these are probably the same people that are out there, getting upset about, of course, the attempted assassination and the violence and the division that's happening across America, and yet they still contribute to the problem themselves. So I encourage people to really take an introspective look in their hearts and their souls and say, hey, we're all the same. And let me tell you, if you have these mindsets about yourself and you've never actually taken time to get to know any Sikhs and learn about the culture, the religion, the history, I encourage you to take the time to do that, because it will change your mind. You will find out how peaceful, how loving, how accepting, how encouraging they are, even of other religions. So it just really breaks my heart to see this kind of intolerance going on in today's society.
And I'll just jump in there, James, with just one quick comment, saying that I actually took one of these people to task on Twitter. And I made a comment saying, well, actually, you should go talk to some Sikhs in this world and open your eyes a bit. And what did they do? They blocked me. And I thought that just sums it up. It is complete blinkered intolerance. You will never tolerate another view apart from your own. And when we all leave this life, as we all will do one day, I think some people are going to get a very rude shock when they pass to the other side, when they find out probably what is on the other side, if indeed there is anything. So anyway, James, carry on.
Yeah, I think in one of the stories we covered last week there, you were saying we all come into the world naked and we all leave naked, or maybe it was one of the commenters that made that association. But again, it's the same, so true. It really is. So let's move along to Angus, and we'll take a look at the amazing story of Harmeet Dhillon. And this is something that is not only an inspiration to Sikhs, but I think that it is an inspiration to immigrants from all nations. I think it's an inspiration to women, young girls, but most of all, I think it's an inspiration to every American and every person around the world, in that when she immigrated to the U.S., she was 2 years old. Her father was a surgeon and was moving to the U.S. to really further his career and explore new opportunities. A very, very tough time and tough opportunities. That was back in 1971. It wasn't easy for any immigrants coming in, especially Sikhs or South Asians, into the U.S. So to take that leap of faith was just, a big trusting exercise for the whole family in trusting America, that it is true that you can make your dreams and just the opportunities are limitless if you work hard. Now, of course, as we were talking, Harmeet took that to heart. As a 2-year-old coming to a new country, a new culture, and just a new environment, it wasn't always easy. I can almost assure you of that. But she worked her ass off to get an education. She graduated at 16 years old and went on to some very prestigious universities to gain a law degree. Afterwards, she went on to work within the Circuit Court of Appeal. She has clerked with judges. She continued to build a practice. Now she has expanded and built her own law firm. Not just working as a partner, but building her firm. This is something that is the dream and envy of so many lawyers, to not only build a firm, but build one that is a national treasure in terms of law firms. They represent some very high profile cases, and they represent human rights and the Constitution of the United States to fight for equality and fair play for all citizens. And the inspiration that comes from her accomplishments to then go ahead and become involved in different areas, the ACLU, working on discrimination and other important topics after 9/11, and then to continue working with the political sphere, representing political parties, politicians, but also being an active member and now a committee person of the national RNC. So, I mean, the inspiration of Miss Dillon should be something that is applauded, that is respected, but also celebrated across the country, because that is what America is supposed to stand for. The ability to work hard, to achieve your dreams, and to contribute to a better nation. And after all, isn't that what everybody wants? A better, stronger, healthier, and united America. So my hat is definitely off to Harmeet. She's worked her butt off, but she has achieved so many things that are just out of reach for most people because they don't have the motivation and drive, which she certainly does. And I'm not going to get into the politics of it because I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate the individual. And, she's doing so much to represent the Sikh people, but also to represent America. So cut her some slack and actually learn to which you are speaking when you are casting these comments online about somebody that you definitely haven't learned about, because you would be impressed, I would hope, about how she's trying to bring a nation together, and your comments are not. So once again, I'll throw that back to you, Angus. I think that really, pretty much touches on my personal, respect and admiration of what she's accomplished.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in everything that you said. I mean, she and the message to these Christian cultists is she's on your side. Don't you realise she is on your side? Yeah. And this whole nonsense about worshipping false gods. I mean, if there is a God, if there is a God, it's probably the same God for everybody. All the religions are interpretations of whatever it is that we look for as when we leave this world. But anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But the point is, she's on your side. She's fighting hard on your side. So why on earth tear her down in such an intolerant way? I wanted to just pick up a couple of comments, or at least one comment that I did see on social media, and this American dream. Whole concept of the American dream. I think she is a prime example of this wonderful American dream of what an immigrant into America can achieve with just sheer hard work and ambition. And somebody said, and I'll quickly paraphrase this comment, but this sums up beautifully, I think, what we're talking about. There's a lady called Jennifer Van Laar commented, "I knew Harmeet Dillon's family before I ever knew her. Her father, Dr. Tejpal Singh Dillon, is an orthopaedic surgeon who is beloved in Eastern NC. Many of his patients were poor factory workers who were injured on the job. He worked long hours to try to help them recover from those painful injuries and was very involved in his community." And this lady says, "I knew him because when I was a court reporter, I took his depositions dozens of times." Her family's story is the story of America, the American dream. That includes religious freedom and escape from religious persecution. It's sad that this persecution still exists. She's faced it since her first time delivering a Sikh prayer at the RNC in 2016, as you referred to, James. And she's continued to work harder than just about anyone else for the cause. So I know she will be fine. Then she finishes it with a text, and the rest of y'all need to do better. And I couldn't put it better myself. Absolutely. So yeah, James, she is the epitome of the American dream. So well done to her.
Absolutely. Even through the struggles of fighting the racism and everything else that she had been subjected to, but she also had a very strong role model in her father, and I would assume the rest of her family. But I mean, just what an amazing family.
Indeed. And from one high achiever to another, my first story is again a great story, and this is. This is a gentleman from California, Raj Singh Badesha, who's become the first Sikh appointed to the Fresno County Superior Court bench in California. I don't know if I pronounced Fresno or Freno, whatever. Anyway, in California. So he's the former Chief Assistant City Attorney, Raj Singh Badesha. And he will begin as a county superior court judge, actually as of today, or a couple of days ago, beg your pardon. So the community in the US, the Sikh community, numbers about 300,000 people. And that community now has representation locally and nationally in the county of Fresno. And he says, I thank you all for your roles in my growth as an individual, as an attorney, and my ascent to the bench. But he does become the first person from the Sikh community to be appointed to the Superior Court bench, and a journey that's taken 2 decades in the making. And he said, he's a very humble character, as you can see from the video here. But he says, wanting to be a judge and run a courtroom was something that I grew into, because when I began my journey, a practicing Sikh like myself couldn't gain admission into a courthouse. He becomes the first person to be appointed in more than 40 years from City Hall. And the mayor, the local mayor, supported him fully all the way through the process. And he said, to see somebody from the Sikh community to be elevated to the bench, the first one in Fresno County, it's a historic moment, it's momentous. But Raj got appointed not because he's a Sikh, but because of his qualities. All highlighting why representation in the Sikh community matters. And another resident, a Sikh resident, said, you'll see his name in the history books. His name will be written in history books, and he's going to be an inspiration for the future. And this is key, actually. He is going to stand as an example. And he actually said himself, today, it's my hope moving forward that the Sikh youngsters present here today know that they can use this as an example. They can aspire to serve this county, this state and this nation in any position they wish to pursue. And interestingly, it says, as a side note, he will wear his traditional kirpan, that's the curved single-edged blade. That's one of the 5 Ks of the Sikh faith. So, yeah, he will be carrying his Sikh faith into that legal environment. But what a great story. Again, we talk about the American dream. Here is a Sikh who's worked his way up as an attorney, and he's worked his way up into one of the upper tiers of the legal profession in America. And again, we've talked about Sikhs who've reached it in politics, and here are Sikhs reaching the highest positions in law. So, and it's all about getting the voice of the community represented in all these fundamental pillars of society, whether it is politics, whether it is the law, whether it's lawmaking or whatever. But this guy, he's, well done to him. He's gone onto the bench, and wonderfully, the audience full of Sikhs, but also full of other Californian residents, all cheering and delighted to see this guy reach, this fantastic achievement in his career, James. It's great to see.
Yeah, and it's an inspiration. As I said with Miss Dillon, it's the same situation where it's an inspiration not only to the Sikh community, but to all communities, all backgrounds, all Americans. That if you work hard and you believe in yourself and you can look in the mirror and be proud of what's looking back at you at the end of the day, then that is achieving the American dream. So it's just a great story, and what a great role model.
Exactly. It's an aspiration for many in the community to say you can make it. Just put the work in, put the effort in, and you can achieve these great things. So well done to him. My next story, this is where things start getting a bit weird. The video that I'm showing now, these are saffron-clad priests in India. They're members of a fringe group, Hindu Sena, that translates as the Hindu army. And they're performing a Hindu fire ritual. And they're chanting religious hymns at a temple in New Delhi. And they're holding a special prayer ceremony for the well-being and long life of former US President Donald Trump after that assassination attempt. Now, Vishnu Gupta, who's the national president of this Hindu Sena, he says, as you know, Donald Trump was attacked. A bullet grazed his ear and he could have died. This is the work of the people who don't believe in humanity, peace, and have jihadi mindset. They don't want Donald Trump to be the American president again. We pray to God that the enemies of Donald Trump must get wiped out and bestow upon him special blessings. Trump should win the upcoming elections with a huge mandate so that humanity is protected. Pakistan remains within its limits. Those with a jihadi mindset and beliefs of radical Islam are destroyed, while India and America move forward towards progress and prosperity. Now, there's lots of interesting interpretations of this, and this is where the geopolitics start getting really confused and complex. But basically, yeah, so we have a Hindu organisation pushing for Trump. Now, of course, the alignment here is clear. There's a right-wing alignment, and Hindus, and again, this comes back to the whole concept of a Hindu Rashtra, and Hindu nationalism, and of course, extending into RSS extremism. is that, yeah, very clearly here there is an alignment with the right wing of the US, with the expectation that Donald Trump will align with the right wing of India, with Modi, the RSS, the BJP, etc., etc. So there is this belief, and of course the Hindus see the Islamic community as their enemy, and you only need to look on right-wing media in India to see extensive anti-Islamic propaganda going everywhere. It's not just anti-Sikh, it's anti-minority, but of course the Islamic community is seen as this great enemy. And of course they're expecting Donald Trump to stand up, as he has on many occasions, and expounded a very right-wing philosophy. But this is where things start getting a little bit interesting, because the right wing and Republicans, as we've just discussed at great length, they've just had a Sikh standing up at their national convention, delivering the prayer to open the convention. And I'll tell you something else, is that we believe Donald Trump, and we know there are Republicans in the party who are very aligned with the Sikh community, who are very aligned with the whole concept of Khalistan, who are aligned with the rights of the Sikh community, of religious minorities in India. So there's a very interesting dichotomy, and I'm sorry to use that big word, but there's a very interesting parallel story running here. We've got the right-wing alignment with Donald Trump from the Hindu Rashtra, the Hindu nationalists, but we've also got an alignment with the Sikh community. Who's going to win? I don't know. But I would say that watch this space. If Donald Trump becomes president of the US later this year, I think the next few years are going to be very interesting, because I think the one thing you can predict about Donald Trump is his unpredictability. We saw it in his last administration. If he is appointed, I think we will see it in his next administration. And I know there are powerful voices in Donald Trump's ears who are pushing for this whole concept of Khalistan. And I think the right wing in India might get a bit of a shock, or at least might be a bit surprised when Donald Trump, if he takes the reins, what direction he will take, not just the US, but his foreign policy about India. Don't forget, Donald Trump is pretty ruthless when it comes to foreign regimes. He gets things done. His results spoke for themselves. He was the only US president to talk to the president of North Korea, for example. He's willing to take on China. He's willing to take on North Korea. He will take on Vladimir Putin, etc., etc. So if Modi misaligns, as it appears, he's aligning himself with Russia, as we've seen in recent days. If India plays that game, Donald Trump will not be afraid of taking India on. He doesn't need trade deals. US is comfortable in its own skin enough not to need a trade deal with India. So Narendra Modi needs to be a little bit careful if Donald Trump takes the reins. Things could get very interesting, James.
Well, that's something I'll have to make some popcorn and sit back and have a beer and popcorn and watch it for 4 years. Because, as you said, it's going to be an interesting time in geopolitics, in international relations, in trade. It's going to run every aspect of society, so it's going to be there. So we'll have to watch and see, and hopefully it's more entertaining than it is scary.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of watch this space, assuming World War III doesn't kick off in the meantime. So we shall see. Okay, let's move from geopolitics to let's get down and dirty, as they say. Let's get down to some negative stuff now. Now, I want to show you a video. Take a look at this video that's been doing the rounds on social media.
तो आई होप कि वो अननोन गनमैन फिर से वो एक्टिव हो, क्योंकि पतवंत सिंह जो पन्नू है ये दोबारा अपने बिल से निकल गया है. उसी अननोन गनमैन ने जिसने निज्जर को मारा था, वही अननोन गनमैन एक वैसा ही उसी प्रकार का कोई अननोन गनमैन था जो पतवंत सिंह पन्नू को भी मारने की कोशिश की थी, लेकिन ये इसकी किस्मत बहुत अच्छी थी, ये बच गया था न्यूयॉर्क में और वो मिस हो गया था पूरा फायर. तो आई होप, और आपको भी बीइंग एन इंडियन आपको भी ये होप करना चाहिए कि वो जो अननोन गनमैन था वो काम तो बिल्कुल सही कर रहा था, गलत काम तो कोई कर नहीं रहा था, उसको दोबारा से एक्टिव हो जाना चाहिए. और ये गुरपतवंत सिंह पन्नू जो है ये दोबारा से अपने बिल से बाहर निकला है, इसको या तो दोबारा बिल में घुसा देना चाहिए या जहां निज्जर पहुंच गया उसको वहीं पर पहुंचा देना चाहिए. तो आई होप कि वो अननोन गनमैन जल्दी से एक्टिव हो जाए.
Okay, there's a very clear agenda there. It's a death threat against Gurdwara Singh Pannun that's very publicly been broadcast. And one of the elements mentioned regularly in this video is the term unknown gunman. And this term unknown gunman has become a bit of a catchphrase in the right-wing extremist social media in India. And of course, unknown gunman is taking this phrase that's often reported, particularly with the Nijar case and other deaths of Khalistani campaigners, where the media refer to they were essentially killed or murdered by unknown gunmen. So the right wing have taken this phrase and they always refer to unknown gunmen, hope that unknown gunmen attack or kill Khalistani campaigners. But yeah, there's a very unambiguous death threat. Once again, another Indian extremist on the right wing calling for the murder of Gurdwara Singh Pannun. Of course, Gurdwara Singh Pannun is the leader of Sikhs for Justice. He is one of the people behind the Khalistan referendum, which the latest iteration is due out in the next couple of weeks. James, this isn't democracy. This isn't even legal in most countries in the world. This is a very clear death threat. What does it say about the Indian right wing?
Well, I think that it shows that they are willing to go the extra mile to get their message out there. And I don't mean that in a good way, in any way, shape, or form. They are not afraid of repercussions and legal consequences because they are very clear in, I mean, the identity's right there. You can see who it is speaking, and, you know, it's just very in your face. So, I mean, why they're allowing this to be so pushed online is just amazing as well.
Yeah, and that's my point is one has to ask why the Indian administration aren't stamping down on this, because in any normal Western democracy, certainly, in fact not even Western democracies, in most countries that follow the rule of law around the world would not allow this sort of material to be broadcast on any medium, social media, whatever, because it breaks pretty much most legal systems. It is a clear incitement to violence. It is a clear death threat. There's no ambiguity here. And if this, as I say, if this was broadcast in any Western country, that gentleman would be getting a knock on his door very quickly from local law enforcement, and he would be taken away and charged with incitement to violence. So why hasn't the Indian police force knocked on this guy's door? As you say, he's appearing on camera, bright as day. It's not going to be hard to identify this guy. Why isn't he being taken down by law enforcement? And I think the answer is obvious. I mean, you know, we don't even need to say it, but clearly the Indian government are quite happy for these sorts of death threats to exist. And one could even argue that they're being encouraged. I mean, we only need to look at Narendra Modi's speech just before the general elections. Narendra Modi made a speech at one of his BJP election rallies where he says, "We will come into your homes and we will kill you." This, of course, refers to Hardeep Singh Nijjar, the plot against Pannun, etc., etc. So even the leader, the Prime Minister of India, has actually gone on public record in front of global cameras to say, "We will come into your own home and we will kill you." And again, I've said this over and over again, this is a Prime Minister of a country that claims it's democratic, that claims it follows the rule of law, and he flies around the world and he shakes hands with our leaders. And I have to condemn our own leaders for doing this. Why are our leaders shaking the hand of a man who has himself said, "We will come into your homes and we will kill you," against his political opponents? And the point is, even if they're not political opponents, even if they are even if they are criminals or even terrorists, the rule of law exists, that you cannot just go around assassinating people anywhere, whether it's in your own country or overseas. You can't just go around assassinating people. The rule of law exists, and the rule of international law exists to stop people like this going around having free rein, killing everybody. And I think we also have to look at Western leaders, because they carry a share of the blame here. Why are Western governments not calling things like this out? Why are Western governments not banning things like this on social media? Why are they not more actively calling things like this out. Now, again, I say certainly in Canada, the US and the UK, that if this appeared and this individual was a resident, a citizen of any of our nations, he would be stopped. And it is very hard to close these things down. Of course, there is we start moving into the areas of free speech and et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, this is a very, very clear violation of every law. So, yeah, I think a share of the blame, James, lies in our own governments that we try to call to account, saying, why are you not stopping governments like Narendra Modi? Why are you not calling it out more loudly? Now, human rights groups are, Amnesty International and many other human rights groups are calling it out. Of course, Sikh organisations are calling it out on an almost daily basis. But why are governments not doing this, James? Why do you think it is?
I think that something that people have been overlooking in terms of something that we've covered is the billionaire wedding. Now, with that, I mean, he is very connected to Modi and the government there in India. And to me, for them to be hiring and spending $10 million on Justin Bieber, $8 to $9 million for Rihanna, not to mention the other Western pop sensations who have performed, I think that in a way that... Damn thing, sorry. I think that in a way is their circumvention of the system to try and get the Western world on their side. And whether it's conscious or subconscious for the Western nation, they're going to say, well, how can they be bad? You know, they're Justin Bieber fans, they're Rihanna fans, they're this and that. And for them to actually take off the blinders and realize that these are some badass people when it comes to the threats that they allow, but not just the threats that the government is allowing to be very public like this one. They encourage it and they're active participants in the actual execution of these plans and these threats. So, I mean, you know, whether anybody's made that connection, maybe it's just me, but I think that that's almost a way that they're trying to infiltrate and gain support of the younger Western generation and turn them against or to encourage, distrust towards the Sikh people, and within the bigger picture, to distrust anyone that's different from them. So it's deplorable. And for that to be allowed to be circulated online, I mean, the BBC or the CBC in Canada, Fox News, they couldn't air this as a commercial or as, user-generated content saying, not our responsibility because they paid for the airtime. Well, those media outlets are still responsible for the content which appears, whether it's print, in newspapers, whether it's television, whether it's on radio. They have a federally regulated obligation to remove or not allow that sort of thing. Why is the online media allowed to bypass all of these laws and regulations to openly have these veiled threats against the life and security of any individual, regardless as to where it is in the world? And that's my rant, Angus. I finally got a rant in there for you.
Yeah, good. No, but actually, I'll go back to one of the points you made, which I think was very interesting. And I think this is the billionaire story that that's been running through a lot of our shows. That wedding actually was very telling, and I think it explains an awful lot, because present at that wedding from the Indian side were all sorts of very high level, I think members of the opposition were there were some very high ranking Indian politicians from all sides, but not just Indian politicians. There was I'll call him the chief snake himself, Tony Blair was there. Boris Johnson, our former Prime Minister from the UK, was there. There were some very high profile people from international elites from around the world at that same wedding. It's all about elitism. Now we have the Davos gathering every year in Switzerland, where a lot of these elite get together to plan their their nefarious plans for global world orders, etc. And you can get into all sorts of conspiracy theories here. But even not even talking about conspiracy theories, it's very clear that there is this high degree of elitism around the world. And we come back to the caste system. It's almost like a caste system. There is this upper caste of the global elite. who clearly collaborate and talk on a regular basis, as that billionaire's wedding, I think, just displayed very clearly. So yeah, I think even just this simple topic brings in this whole story of elitism. Just what these layers of society is that elite layer collaborating amongst itself on a global basis. It's the globalists again. We could do a whole show on the globalists, but let's not get sidetracked by that, James.
Yeah, and I think in fairness, just to clarify on those statements, I think that it's fair to state that I don't believe that these pop stars actually understand the complexities of the issues and human rights violations going on. And I don't think they've realized that they were being used as pawns potentially. And I say that potentially. But yeah, I don't think that they necessarily knew that they were being utilized in that fashion. They just saw it as an opportunity to provide a service at a pre-wedding event. So I don't think that they knew the geopolitics or, as I said, the human rights issues that played into this as well. So just in fairness to them, I thought that we should point that out.
Yeah, as I say, I think you're right. The pop stars are irrelevant in this big story. They're just pawns in the big story. So, okay, let's move on to my final story. I'll just whip through this. This is we had a hate crime very recently in the southeast of England against the Gurdwara in Gravesend in Kent in England, where some guy ran in with a blade. And the Gurdwara, there's a lot of misinformation being sent out across social media, all sorts of conspiracy theories and a lot of quite dangerous misinformation being spread about this attack. So I think just to clear things up from certainly our perspective, the Gurdwara released a statement, I think yesterday or the day before, just clarifying exactly what happened in that attack against the members of the congregation, the Sangat. So the management committee of the Gurdwara, the Guru Nanak Darbar, Gravesend, Gurdwara, have released the following statement. On the evening of July the 11th, an individual came to Guru Nanak Darbar, Gurdwara in Gravesend and entered one of the small Diwan halls. The Gurdwara security team were carrying out a regular security patrol when they noticed the armed individual in the small Diwan hall brandishing a bladed weapon. This happened after Sukhasan and Guru Granth Sahib Ji was not present. The Gurdwara security team confronted the armed individual, and contained the threat. The police were immediately called by the security team. Due to the nature of the threat and subsequent attack on the security staff, the security team enacted security protocols to evacuate the Gurdwara for the safety of the Sangat, which included both women and children. The security team managed to contain the threat within the hall whilst waiting for the police. Some members of the Sangat then entered the Diwan hall against the instructions of the Gurdwara security team. Unfortunately, this resulted in the armed individual escaping. After running out of the premises, the individual then attacked two females on Trinity Road before being apprehended by members of the Sangat and police. The outcome could have been a lot worse if it wasn't for the bravery, quick thinking and rapid response of the Gurdwara security team. 2 days later, the individual was charged by the police with assault, occasional actual bodily harm, etc., etc., etc. The police are treating the incident as religiously aggravated and as a hate crime. The Gurdwara is supporting victims, both those who receive physical injuries and those suffering from trauma, and is working with the local authority to arrange counselling if needed. So, a bit of clarification. I think the interesting point here, and this really is a message out to the community, certainly from this Gurdwara, is they have a very comprehensive security team in existence in the Gurdwara, who clearly have protocols in place to deal with such threats. And I think the message from this, the lesson learned from this hate crime attack, and we still don't know who was behind it, but I think we can all guess. The protocols are in place and they are clearly practiced, rehearsed and ready for such hate crimes. So I have no doubt that Gurdwara is around, well, certainly the UK, but I'm sure definitely in the US after the Najjar incident and across the US. I think it is very clear that security teams have to be in place and ready at all times, particularly during prayers and get-togethers, community events, that these security teams need to be in place and protocols in place and practiced, that if any of these lone lunatics come in to attack, as clearly they do, that they can be dealt with, because law enforcement will take time to get there. So clearly, James, protocols need to be in place to protect against incidents like this.
Absolutely. And we're seeing this around the world with it seems to be increasing incidents of hate crimes, of racially motivated crimes, and other issues that are happening at places of worship and elsewhere. So we don't know exactly who or what was the motivation behind that. But I think it's important to have a message out there that if you are an individual who is feeling like you're going to harm yourself or others, that you not be afraid to reach out for help. There are a lot of resources out there. And, it's a sign of bravery. It's a sign of strength, and it's a sign of self-awareness. So, again, here at Satledge TV, we encourage people to reach out if they need the mental health resources, if that's impacting you or someone you know or love and care about. Just don't be afraid to reach out. It's a sign of strength, not weakness. And, the other influences, if it was a foreign influence and other things, of course, there's not much that we as individuals can do, but I think society opening up and being more accepting of each other definitely can play a role in making things better.
Yeah, I don't think we need to preach to the community because, of course, they've been living with hate crimes and, transnational repression, let's call it for what it is, for many, many years, if not even decades. So, our heart goes out to the community who face this literally on a daily basis. Okay, let's move on to our comments. And I'm delighted to say thank you so much to our wonderful audience who have been sending the comments in by the bucket load. So thank you so much for those. Do keep them coming. We very much appreciate them, as we say on a regular basis. So our first batch from the show that we covered the other day, what do the British think of Sikhs? And again, Krilla, one of our regulars, made a couple of comments, and I wanted to bring these up. Because she said, Trudeau has done a great deal for Sikhs just by standing up and saying India might be involved in Najjar's murder. And since then, he's become India's number 2 enemy after Gurdwara Pannun. And then she thanks us for the show. Well, thank you for being in our audience and, of course, your comments. Yeah, this brings up Justin Trudeau, James. To be honest, I'm no fan of Justin Trudeau, but I have to take my hat off to this guy. He has been an amazing character standing up for his community, his large Sikh community in Canada, and he's not afraid. I mean, Canada, let's face it, is not one of the world's largest nations on any level, but it is certainly one of the most courageous to stand up for the community. And Trudeau has been this figurehead who has not been afraid to stand up against India, this enormous power on the global stage now. He's stood up and he's called out transnational repression. He stood up to protect his Sikh community. So I really take my hat off to Justin Trudeau, as our commenter certainly has done.
Absolutely. And he took office at a very tough time. He's had a lot of tough things to deal with. But when it comes to really promoting the inclusion and acceptance of all Canadians, I mean, you can not find anybody who has been more steadfast in that resolve. So.
Yeah, so, well done, Justin Trudeau. He's not been afraid to put his head above the parapet. Now, your second comment, and I wanted to talk about this just briefly. Can you guys also talk about the show Surinder Singh started, talking Punjab, that is, the one where he's naming people who committed human rights violations in the Punjab. Now these people are living in Western countries. Yes, thank you for this. We're working on it, and this show that Surinder, it's broadcast in Punjabi. And he has not been afraid, Surinder, in calling out many of these individuals who have committed crimes, illegal crimes, obviously by definition. I mean, these people have committed crimes in the Punjab, and they now live in the West, and they're living amongst us in our own society, and they're not being called out. But Surinder has been standing up and calling out these people, pointing the finger at these people, and saying, "Do you realise what these people have done in the Punjab?" Now he's got into trouble for this, but he's not afraid. Surinder has the courage to stand up and call these people out for the crimes that they have committed in the Punjab. And he has become a target for doing this. And these people are turning on Surinder and attacking him from all sides, trying to stop him doing this, trying to stop his freedom of, not just freedom of speech, but trying to stop out his moral crusade to say these people who've committed crimes, who've committed these human rights violations, are here living amongst us in the West. So, back to your comment. Sorry to just have a quick rant there. But yes, your comment, we are, I've been talking with Surinder and we are working on it. Of course, that show was in Punjabi. I don't speak a word of Punjabi, neither does James, and we are getting a summary drawn up of that, and we will hopefully bring up this in the English-speaking side. So watch this space. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and we will do what we can on that. So watch this space. Now, a couple of comments from one of our audience in the UK. I love these two comments. Paul Chima has written, and this is after we've talked a lot about the Indian, the Punjabi diaspora, the Sikh diaspora coming to the UK, how they're treated and how they've integrated and how they've contributed so massively and so wonderfully to the British, the British nation. And he says, my best friend is white. He calls me his second dad. I love him like a son. I'd be lost without him. I go to all lengths to help him. This, I mean, what a lovely, warm comment this is, and it really brings goosebumps out. Really, how you can almost visualise this relationship. It's lovely. And then he says, "I'm a British Sikh. I'm proud of it. Long live Great Britain." I mean, I don't even need to comment on that. I mean, what a fabulous comment, James. It's not even just integration. This guy, Paul Chima, he is a Brit through and through, and it's an honour to have you, not just amongst our audience, but it's an honour to have you as a citizen of Great Britain. And I'm sure the same in Canada, James. I'm sure you've got many Canadian Sikhs who feel the same way about their own nation.
Absolutely. I was once at the Vaisakhi parade, and a gentleman, probably in his mid-70s, I would say, Sikh gentleman. He didn't speak much English, but he is now a Canadian citizen, and he came up and gave me the biggest hug. And he just wanted to thank every other Canadian for being open and just loving having new people join us as Canadians. So yeah, it was quite heartwarming. But I did notice that message, and it really summed up a lot about the Sikh culture and the Sikh people, about how open they are to everybody.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, my elderly mother, I'm going back some time ago now, but when I said I'm working with the Sikh community, and my elderly mother, she's quite right wing, and she's a typical sort of British white right wing old lady, with her views, let's say. And she said, as soon as I said I was working with the Sikh community, she went, "Oh, I like the Sikhs. They're good people, aren't they?" And I thought, yeah, you see. So wonderful. I mean, we talked at great length about it, but thank you for that wonderful comment and a little insight into your own life. It's very much appreciated. Jagtar Sidhu, again, another pro-Trudeau comment here. The Prime Minister of Canada, the bold leader in the world. We Sikhs love you, my Prime Minister. Well, we just talked about it, James. Yeah, I think the support from the Sikh community, the appreciation amongst the Sikh community, because they appreciate anybody who stands up for them, particularly on the global stage, who stands up against international oppression. I mean, as I've just said, Justin Trudeau has had the courage to put his head above the parapet. He called out India about Nijar immediately. That he had evidence from his intelligence services, and he knew the backlash that he would get from India and possibly from other nations. And he was the only global leader who stood up and called out transnational repression for what it was, James. So, as I just said, I'm no personal fan of Trudeau, but in this, I salute Justin Trudeau, and he has definitely got his Sikh community on side. He knows where his bread is buttered.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you see so much support for him, and yet we have an MP, Mr. Singh, who is also just an amazing man who could potentially lead the country one day. So you never know when we talk about all these Sikhs that are just striving and reaching amazing heights. You never know where things will be in the next election in Canada. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. I mean, imagine having a Sikh Prime Minister of Canada. I mean, there's a story we'd like to cover. Let's see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
Okay, next comment. Jay Singh, what territorial integrity? This, of course, goes back to when we talk about the British Empire. We talk about Akhand Bharat. This concept that the extremist right wing, the Indian nationalists, keep pushing this notional boundary of the Hindu Rashtra that would actually arguably include Afghanistan in the west, that would go all the way across Bangladesh in the east, etc. and it follows the old British Empire. But of course, territorial integrity was only gathered by British India. It was the Raj, it was the British Empire. The regional population never supported the idea of India, and the hundreds of millions died in opposition. So this is a great comment. This highlights, and again, referring back to the territorial integrity that India talks about, and I in turn have talked about, that their argument against the breakup of India, their argument against self-determination, and this is in legal terms, their defence against the right of self-determination of Punjab and other regions, is that it is a threat to the territorial integrity of India. Now, actually, the legal condition that defence exists is that the people in those areas, those regions asking for self-determination, they must be treated with equal human rights. They must be awarded equality. They must be awarded equal human rights and treated equally as every other citizen in that same territorial bound. And clearly the Punjab has not. There's enough evidence to prove that Punjab has not been treated with equality, has not been treated with the same human rights, and the same can be applied to Kashmir. The same can be applied actually to many other parts of India, particularly on the peripheries. This argument about territorial integrity, unfortunately, does not wash. It does not stand. And I think that the Khalistan movement are pushing this very hard, saying from a legal perspective, not even just a democratic perspective, but from a legal perspective, the territorial integrity of India is questionable. And in our films about Ladakh, in our stories about Kashmir, and our many rants about the Punjab, it is very clear India is made up of very, very diverse cultures who have very little in common with each other. And of course, the partition, when it occurred in 1947, created a lot of this division. But it also set the foundations for a lot of bloodshed. A huge amount of bloodshed was spilt in 1947 in those dreadful massacres that occurred then. But of course, the Punjab has suffered ever since. And for the Punjab, the Sikhs were betrayed dreadfully during partition. They continue to be betrayed to this very day. And this territorial integrity, how long will it last? Well, James, we've talked about it. It's a very big call to say that India will break up, but greater people than us have said that they can foresee the breakup of India, and potentially they can see the formation of Khalistan, James. Who knows?
And people at one time could never see the USSR breaking up, or, other regions. So it just shows that, history could repeat itself in a different geographical location, but it wouldn't be the first time.
What a perfect example. The Soviet Union, one of the superpowers for decades and decades. And what happened to the Soviet Union? Almost literally overnight, it broke apart. Again, through weird catalytic events, unpredictable events that ultimately came down to people power. So we've said it many times. The breakup of India could literally happen overnight, just through some totally unrelated event. We shall see. Bigger things have happened. And then finally, final couple of comments. This Gurpreet Kaur made this comment actually on one of our other stories. And this, if you recall, we mentioned our concerns, and I'm going to cover this in Monday's show in greater detail. James and I will cover this in greater detail because we've had a lot of comments about this, and there's interesting discussions to be had. But I'll just quickly touch on this because Gurpreet had made a couple of comments. I did comment on yesterday's show, but it disappeared, and I'll put it again. Thanks to both of you lovely people. Well, thank you for your comments. And the comment below is actually, it did appear. So your comment did appear, but many others haven't, and we've got proof of this. But we'll talk about that on Monday's show, so do watch Monday's show. But anyway, thank you for your comment. So your comment that was relevant to the discussions of that show. And the sovereignty of Punjab will deliver justice to the people of Punjab. Until then, no justice will be given. And it was never given before, despite India has played its victim card to defame Sikhs like their Air India bombing, labelling them as terrorists. Khalistan Zindabad, thanks again for the wonderful show. Well, thank you for your comment. I think this actually mirrors what we have just been talking about, is that Punjab will not see justice until it has its right to self-determination, until it has its right to autonomy, to govern its own people, to take care of its own people. We've seen that there is no equality. It is not treated as an equal in the Indian territorial integrity. It is not seen like that.
Right.
And we believe in self-determination because we are from a democratic background. James and I live in democratic countries that we take democracy and the right to self-determination for granted. And you're right that Punjab will never see justice. It will always be treated as an outlier. It will always be treated as a second tier part of India, because that's what's happened since 1947. There is no sign of it ever changing. As long as the Hindu majority rule India, as frankly there is no reason to say it will never be any different. As long as the Hindu majority run India, they will always feel threatened by the Sikh community, and they will always therefore treat Punjab as a second-class part of India. So unfortunately, you're absolutely right. And we know that they will sink to all sorts of dreadful depths to win this argument, to try to defeat the Punjab and try to defeat the Sikh community by false flag things. We've seen it, whether it's at a small scale, it's covering Hindu temples with graffiti that they then blame on the Sikh community, but has been shown actually to be a false flag by Hindu activists, or whether it's the Air India bombing, which all evidence at the moment does point to a potential false flag by Indian intelligence. It was not, probably not, by the Sikh community. So James, it's a very sad story for this, but this is why we fight as democratic people. We will continue to fight for the rights of the Punjab and the rights of the Sikh community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, something that we state all the time, is that our goal is to bring truth and awareness to what's going on, because so many people in the West don't realize the atrocities, the human rights violations, the violations against women and children, and I can go on and on. So, but that again is the goal of the show, and we encourage you to continue to send us your amazing comments. But also, if you have story ideas, or if there's something that you would like to know more about that we can research and bring a story about, by all means, don't be shy. Let us know.
Indeed. But once again, time has drawn us to bring the show to a close, I'm afraid. But you have been watching Perspectives. Tomorrow I will be interviewing a very interesting gentleman and author who's written various books about Indian intelligence collaborating with Afghan intelligence, a story that we've touched on several times, and a lot of background about the intelligence services working together, whether it's Pakistan, India or Afghanistan. So do watch out for that interview coming up. Hopefully it'll be uploaded tomorrow. But in the meantime, don't forget you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com. Please do send us anything that you think we should be covering, and of course do keep these wonderful comments coming. We do appreciate those, as we've said on many occasions. But in the meantime, it is goodbye from me, and it is goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have of course been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.